Food is all around us. It's no longer just in our kitchens and restaurants. It's on our phones, Instagram, YouTube. We use food as a reason to get together, celebrate, and experience. No matter if that experience is in your home or in a different city. I am your host, Scott Scher, and I'm here to talk about your favorite food and the people behind them. This is the I'd Eat That podcast.
Is flavor. In the end of the day, you have a lean piece of meat, you're not going to get much flavor in there. It's going to be tougher, more chewy. So the marble is actually fat that builds up in the meat muscle and allows that meat to cook in lower temperatures. So it's softer when you're eating it. It's more tender. It's more with the fat being inside the muscle like that. When you're cooking it, it allows for a more juicier steak.
Thank you for joining me on episode 13 of the I'd Eat That podcast, the food podcast that interviews food people. We have Udi Greenberg, butcher at Meet the Butchers. Meet the Butchers is a wholesaler of quality meat and are able to ship meat directly to your doorstep. Meet the Butchers is part of the Premier Meat Company. Udi is going to tell us the best way to prepare and serve different cuts of meat. Let's talk to Udi to learn more. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me on the I'd Eat That podcast. Today, we have Udi Greenberg from Meet the Butchers. How are you doing today, Udi?
Good, thank you. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show. So, it looks like that Meet the Butchers and Premier Meat Company has a large selection of cuts of meat. What type of cuts do you recommend to people?
Premier is our, call it our mother company. That's the company that started everything for us. We focus on high-quality proteins delivered straight to chefs in restaurants, hotels, caterers, private chefs here in Southern California and in Las Vegas. Meet the Butchers is our online e-com where we allow the same type of quality to be reached all across the U.S. to, the everyday person who wants to up their game. And as far as meat goes and as far as options go, we are the overall protein house. So we process in-house every type of protein possible, from beef, pork, lamb, veal, poultry. We do grinding as well, of course. We have our own seafood company, Crystal Bay Seafood. As offerings go, we have a wide selection of offerings. And we also import Wagyu beef from Australia and from Japan. And that's kind of like our biggest focus recently is on Meet the Butchers to focus on the higher end product from Wagyu, whether it be from Japan or from Australia. So many different options from there.
I know when I walk into a butcher shop and I know, and especially looking at your website, and I'm sure a lot of other people may feel the same way, that you see all this great selection of meat, but you feel a little intimidated just because you don't want to over season it or you don't want to overcook it, and you just want to give the meat justice. So what are a few of your favorite cuts, and what's the best way to maybe serve or prepare them?
Sure. I am one who, I'm not a huge cook myself. I tend to just barbecue grill just about everything I do. I'll sometimes saute on the pan and finish off in the oven, but all depending on the type of cut of meat. One is not as popular and known, which is the top sirloin culotte, picanha, as many people know it. It's very famous in the Brazilian barbecue world. It's one of my favorite cuts. We bring that product in from Australia. It's a Wagyu product, and that you can do many, many different things with it. You could roast it. That's a full roast in the oven. You can slice it into steaks and cook it off on the grill. You can sear it on the pan. So really many different things that you can do with that specific cut. You could even chop it raw and eat it as a tartare that I've done before as well. So that specific cut is something that to me is not as popular. It's kind of underrated, similar to its connected friend, the top sirloin butt, which is not as popular in many places, but to me it's an underrated piece of meat. A lot of texture, a lot of flavor. I like meat with a lot of chew to it. Not a lot of chew, but chew to it. Something that I can feel that I'm biting into, along with that tenderness that I look for when it comes to the quality product. Another great piece of meat is the spinalis, which is the ribeye cap. Those are a little bit harder to come around because we have to remove that from the actual ribeye. And most chefs want to get a ribeye with the spinalis attached to it, but sometimes we'll get orders where we're able to remove that spinalis and sell that as an individual piece of meat, and that is probably best cut of steak that the cow can offer.
Both of those sound really good. I need to check those out. How do you go about seasoning your steak?
Sure. Good question. I see a lot of people nowadays, with social media, people can go online and see everybody's methods and different types of rubs out there and whatnot. I believe in if you're eating a quality piece of meat, you don't need anything more than salt and pepper. That's it. Just good kosher salt, nice coarse salt, any sort of black pepper will do. And that's it. That's all you need.
Simple. I like it. And a quick word from our sponsors. What should people look for in their meat?
Customers that we have, they're looking for something different, something that they can't find locally, something that stands out, that they can host parties with, that they can show off with, that they can enjoy versus going to a restaurant and paying for example, a filet steak where you would go and eat at a restaurant, a filet steak at around $50 or $60. I'm going to be eating, maybe choice, maybe prime. If you're lucky, you're going to get a prime piece of meat. Most of the times it's going to be choice for that price. Through a company like Meet the Butchers, you can get that type of quality or higher than that quality, like in Wagyu, for about the same price or cheaper. So the value comes in the quality, teaching the consumers that there is better quality. And that's really what we focus on, is the quality versus anything else.
Okay, that makes sense. What is marbling on a steak and why does it matter?
Well, marbling is flavor. In the end of the day, you have a lean piece of meat, you're not going to get much flavor in there. It's going to be tougher, more chewy. So the marble is actually fat that builds up in the meat muscle and allows that meat to cook in lower temperatures. So it's softer when you're eating it. It's more tender. It's more, with the fat being inside the muscle like that, when you're cooking it, it allows for a more juicier steak versus a very dry and lean steak. So marble is very important. And of course, in some types of beef, like even Japanese, you can have too much marble where it just kind of turns a little bit too saturated and very greasy. But some people enjoy that. And that's where you only eat a couple of bites. You can try something spectacular, something that you've never had before, versus a prime piece of steak or a lower end type of Wagyu from Australia or a domestic American producer that's going to give you that very soft, tender piece of meat with that very nice flavor. It all has to do with marbling.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
What's a common mistake that you see people doing when they're choosing their meat?
I can't blame somebody if they can't afford to buy something better quality, but I think that from what I've noticed, from what the end users or consumers are known to believe, the biggest mistake is basing their meat off how fresh it is. Meaning, when you go into the supermarket and you see that bright pink red meat and they're promoting it as very fresh meat, you're thinking, great, this is great. It's fresh, it was just produced, and have a nice fresh piece of meat. But your chances of getting a very chewy piece of meat is most likely because it hasn't had the time to properly age, to break the muscles. And rigor mortis is what it's called, where the muscles, they break down and allow for a more tender piece of meat. Markets and butcher shops don't necessarily have the time age the product properly. And so that's pretty much what they're allowed to put out. And the end user is accustomed to seeing very bright, very pink, very lean meat, thinking that that's what it needs to be. When in fact, if you took in comparison to the product that we promote, darker, aged, and when we say fresh, it's going to have about 30 days of age on it.
Very interesting. I didn't realize that. What are some of the premium cuts of meat or unique meats that you have that you offer?
I'm an exclusive importer of some of the finest brands from around the world. We have an exclusive program from Japan that we import direct. It's called Kobe wine beef. It's a relative of Kobe beef. It doesn't come with the same prices of Kobe beef, but the same attributes, the same qualities, raised and born in the same cities and prefixtures as Kobe beef and the same pins, eating the same feeds. That's definitely one of my more premium brands that I bring in and carry, that you can find that on my website at Meet the Butchers, and you can get ribeyes or New York strips. And then for our Australian Wagyu, we have a wide variety of just about every cut possible to offer: tri-tips, flank steaks, ribeyes, New Yorks, fillets, culottes, sirloin, chuck short ribs, karubis, just about anything that you can imagine that comes off that carcass we'll bring in. And besides that, we have many other very high-end brands of poultry or pork, Karabuta pork, heritage breed porks, Berkshires, Duroc.
And you deliver throughout the entire United States?
Premier itself delivers locally into Southern California and Las Vegas with our own vehicles, our own routes and trucks and drivers. But Meet the Butchers, we work with FedEx. That's our third-party shipper. And so all the rates that we have on the website is pretty much generated through their system, and we use them to get product shipped over anywhere in the United States, either next day arrival or 2 days.
And with the holidays coming up, do you have any special offers for the holidays?
Well, we have a lot of special offers in Southern California with the local business that we do here online. And online, in the past we would focus on prime ribs and turkeys and whatnots, but this year it's mainly just focusing on what we do best, which is the highest quality products that we have to offer in terms of steaks, and try to bring in some nice deals when it comes to the steak offerings. The bulkier turkey and prime rib, a little bit more difficult to sell online just because of shipping. Shipping can sometimes be very frustrating. So we tended to focus on other stuff, like putting a Japanese steak on your dinner table.
Okay. Makes sense. So, Udi, are you ready for the final 4 questions?
Sure.
So, what food city are you dying to go to that you haven't been to yet?
I mean, I want to say San Francisco, though I have been there, but I haven't. I've only been there on business for maybe a quick day, and I haven't had the chance to really go and enjoy, what those restaurants have to offer.
Udi, what is the hardest meal for you to pass up when you're out to dinner?
Oh man, I'm a sucker for carbs, simple foods for me, because I can't go to a steakhouse anymore. So I eat my steak at home, and then when I go to restaurants, my weaknesses are like pizzas and pastas.
And what's the most exotic dish that you've eaten?
Sheesh, I'm not a huge exotics guy. I'm a very simple, basic eater. I'm a meat and chicken kind of guy. Exotic, I would probably say something like some sort of a shot of foie gras with some other stuff inside that I wasn't too sure exactly what I was drinking. It was more of a drink, but there was a chunk of foie gras in there with some foie gras mousses and other stuff that was pretty phenomenal. And I guess that would probably be the most far out thing that I tried.
That's pretty far out.
Yeah.
And Udi, if people want to learn more about you, Meet the Butchers, and Premier Meat Company, where can they find information on that?
Well, we have our websites, both meetthebutchers.com and premiermeatcompany.com. We have our social medias at Meet the Butchers, at Premier Meats. There's also my page at Meet the Butcher, MEET. Just generalizing a lot of information in the posts. I answer everybody who messages me, so that if anybody has questions, a lot of the information will come directly from me.
Perfect. And I'll have all the social media and company links on the description below. Udi, thank you so much for joining me on the episode of I'd Eat That Podcast.
Awesome. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Big thanks to Udi Greenberg for joining me on the I'd Eat That Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and like this podcast. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Curate for additional content. Next week, we will have Jeff, the 420 Chef. He is the author of The 420 Gourmet. It's a cookbook that uses cannabis as the main ingredient. He's going to talk with us about cooking with cannabis. I will see you next week on the I'd Eat That Podcast.